Welcome, ladies and gentlemen. This is the Puzzle Piece Podcast. I'm your host, Nehemiah Wilson. We have finished the Creek Bank Chronicles. We talked about a lot about Trousdale County football, the history and tradition, and everybody was asking me, well, when are you going to talk basketball? Since that's the sport I played, and I did play basketball in high school. I'll say myself, I was pretty good. My guest today is going to agree with me because it's my show. But I'm here with my former head coach in Trousdale County basketball, Coach Mike Potts. How are you
Yes,
doing?
sir. Doing great, man. That's an easy start right there. It's no problem at all to say how good you were.
Yeah. So basketball in general. What was it like for you? When did you start playing? How did you get involved and into coaching and all that?
Playing wise, just took an interest to it as a kid at home. My brother was a tall kid like me, and my dad put a goal up on the garage out back and started playing, and he taught me how to shoot, and so I went from there, and then I played I remember playing a youth league 1 year at the First Baptist Church. Of course, didn't have a clue what I was doing. I was one of those kids that I tell people all the time, until I was about a junior in high school, I didn't even understand what I was even out there doing. And I know there's so many others like that. So, but played youth league 1 year here in town at the church, I remember, and then Coach Dixon, he come in the fifth grade, and we had a team. We actually had a travel team that played fifth and sixth grade.
Okay.
Again, I was just a big kid that was out there playing, running around, but I enjoyed the sport. And then Coach Miller, my seventh grade year here in Trousdale County, was a big turning point for me because he taught so much. I learned tons and tons that year and the next year in practice. And then my freshman year, he was our head coach. So that was where I got the majority of my learn and my coaching from. Actually, a lot of stuff that we did when you played was the same things I did when I played for Coach Miller in high school. And then we went to sub-state that year, and so that was a big plus for me. You put a lot of energy in you, a lot of fire in you. And then went on my next 2-3 years of high school and got knocked out in the semifinals of the region every year. And so you talking about tough, heartbreaking. Felt like we had a team to get back to the state tournament, and we get beat by Pickett County, which won the state 3 of those years right there. So just makes it really tough. But I tell you, right across the street from right here where we're sitting, my mom took a job in 1990 working at the Ward School. She was the election commission officer.
Okay.
And so her office was in the Ward School, in the basement of the Ward School. And so every day I'd ride the bus up here, I'd get off, and Thad Harper, David Burnley, Dale Rankin, Bryant Crenshaw, all those guys would be out here on the outside courts. And I was a young kid, would play with them, but it was good. At the time you thought you just getting picked on or beat up on, how that is.
Yeah.
But it was a great deal for me because how much you learn from that experience you learn from that. So we spent a lot of time playing here. And then I had access to the Ward School. I could shoot some on the weekends and could get mom's keys. As long as people wasn't in the building, I could use it some. So like I say, it was good for me. So that was a good experience for me in school.
Yeah, I definitely remember the Ward School, and you talk just that time period. We probably crossed paths around that time period because I would have been probably in the Head Start program there right around that time, and I was living here, so I was probably at the court running around trying to get in trouble.
Right, and I guarantee we did because when I was in high school, we had the youth league program, and it had started back up probably when I was a junior in high school, and I coached one of the teams there, and Daniel Kemp, Coach Kemp, that come back and coached after me and teaches at the high school now, he was on my team.
Okay.
And so I guarantee you guys was right there because Daniel was the same class or a year behind you guys. So
year after us. Yeah.
So like I say, I know we were, and so that's what's so crazy about it. Because I come back, to be honest, I didn't go to school to teach. I went to college to be a soil scientist. I'd worked in soils and worked in agriculture for years, and I had an opportunity to come back here because the coach was leaving and going to Watertown. And they called and offered me this job, and I took it. I told them, I'd do it for a year because John Harper, my first cousin, he was a senior that year. And I said, well, I'll come back and coach them for a year, and then I'll, probably go on. Well, 20 years later, I was still teaching. So.
We're a hard bunch to get away from.
It is.
So, so what was your thought process? You said you were only going to do it for a year.
Yeah.
what was your philosophy going into it? Because I'll tell you this: the coach that left, Coach Luttrell, that would have been my freshman year.
Right.
He told us specifically when he took the job that his directive from Toby was to put some discipline in the high school basketball program, especially the boys, because I guess there had been some issues prior, and he told us, I'm not concerned about winning. I'm here to teach you how to act. So what was it like coming in to follow that, and what were you looking at?
Well, it was a blessing because I was a young kid too. You know, I didn't have any formal coaching. I'd coached AAU a little bit, and I had played for some good disciplinary coaches. In college, you know, I had some really good guys that taught us right and wrong. And so I knew how to lead men, but, you know, I was the same age. When I started teaching, I was 22. And so, you know, the senior class I started with was 18. So there wasn't much difference in those few years, you know. I mean, I'm not going to lie, I was still running around town, and they'd be at some of the same parties I was. So it is what it is. But Coach Luttrell was a big plus for me there and he told me, because they called me before the season that year and asked, because I was finishing up school, and asked if I would take the job. He would take both programs. He would do boys and girls as long as I'd come the next year. And he told me that was what his goal was. It wasn't winning and losing. He thought there was talent here, but he was going to get them under control to where they could be taught. And man, when I got here, that job was done. I could just start teaching. And so for the next 7 years is what I coached here. I just tried to implement my system and then teach you guys what I felt was what it took to win. And so, you know, we were blessed to have some good athletes, and you guys bought in and rode with it too.
Yeah, you talk about buying in. To me, let me ask you this: would you say we were easy to coach?
I didn't have much trouble with you guys. Your class, you know, it was like anything else. I always said there's knuckleheads, and boys was like fighting every day. You know, I always said the difference between coaching boys and coaching girls, I've done both, is boys are talented enough and have the knowledge and want to or can do. It's making them want to. It's getting them to, it's almost like training horses or dogs or any other athlete or whatever. You have to almost break them. I had to almost do things to break guys, and then you could build them up. Because it was always funny, and I used to make this statement, especially the class behind you guys. I used to make a statement, I don't know who told you it was God's gift to basketball, but somebody lied to you. And so you had to say some of those harsh things because they had such a mindset that they were already good that you couldn't hardly get them to teach. So yeah, that was the hard part. But yes, your class, you guys are so athletic. So I knew if I could get you to do what I wanted to do as far as play my style, I wanted to play fast, I wanted to play hard-nosed, and I wanted to be aggressive, then you guys, it fits you. You know what I'm saying? Every group don't have that, but y'all had it. So, yes, as far as easy to coach, I don't remember. I know Jonathan, Jonathan Ford was one of the players on that team, and I can remember in warm-ups one night, I told Jonathan, I said, now, every layup, I want your hand or your elbow over the rim. Every layup. And, he didn't understand what I was trying to do. Well, we went through warm-ups, and he did the same thing. And I sent him to the locker room and told him to dress out. He was done for the night. Oh, Mama was mad. She come to me the next, that night and talking, and I said, if Jonathan's going to play for Hartsville, he's going to play for me. He's going to have to do what I ask him to do. I said, because there's no other schools in Hartsville. And so luckily we had that kind of rapport, and I could get away with some of that stuff. You couldn't do that now. You know what I mean? There's some things there, I'm sure, but he understood that. He saw that, and I think once everybody kind of understood it was my way or no way, it all just kind of clicked in place and went from there. Because but now, I don't remember, and you may remember, but I don't ever remember having actually arguments with any of you guys. We kind of talked about it. I told them what I wanted, or we run about it or whatever. But nobody ever come back at me and really was back talk or any of that kind of stuff.
Yeah, I don't think so either.
I know they didn't agree with me.
Yeah,
I totally know that, and that's just being coach. I always told them if they liked me as a coach, I probably wasn't doing my job. Now I tried every day before we left that gym to pat you on the back or do something to let you know I loved you, but I had to make you, I had to make you mad. Because if not, I couldn't get a one-on-one at it.
Yeah, yeah. And I don't specifically remember anything that I would look back on, especially and consider like any problems
Right.
or anything like that. I mean, you're obviously dealing with, 14, 15, 16, 17-year-old boys, so, testosterone and hormones are there. So I think things from the outside may have looked
Sure.
worse than they might have actually been, just because boys use a certain kind of language and
That's right.
attitudes, but yeah, I think in general I had fun every complete year I played,
Right.
because there was my sophomore year, I did step away. I just wasn't having fun.
Right.
And I looked at it and I'm like, I'm here to have fun. I can look into the crystal ball and see the NBA and basketball is not necessarily my future. I'm just here to have fun. If I'm not here having fun,
Right.
Find something else to do.
And that's so hard. That's such a line to do. That's so hard because, I played college. I got out of Hartsville and got to go play college and played 3 years there. And then I had the same aha moment. When I got to MTSU and I was doing 2 days over there going through workouts, and I was the only guy that wasn't dunking in the layup line, and I was, some of that stuff that I just saw that I'm not going to make it. You pretty much have to decide. And so I walked up to the coach at one of those practices and I said, "Coach, I think I'm going to go to class." And he said, "I think you're making the right choice." And so, I had that moment, but I'm with you. And I had several guys that would come to me, and I always, as long as they came to me and we talked about it, man, I thought that was just showed manhood, I guess you would say. You come up to me in person and you're willing to sit down with me, "Coach, I need to talk to you." And we talk about it and you decide that's your choice, man, I'm never going to question your choice. Now, I'm going to try my best if I think it's better for you to stay and talk to you. But when they made those choices, that was it. And I probably did the same with you. That's the thing about it. When guys made those choices, as long as they come up and made it to themselves. Now, today, we didn't have technology like you do now.
Yeah.
We didn't have the cell phone. We went to the first camps, and I still remember you guys borrowing my phone or using a pay phone to call home, that kind of stuff. These kids now, they think by sending a text to a coach and telling "Coach, I quit," that's good enough.
Mm-hmm.
Well, that's just like not showing up to your job the next day. There's so much stuff now that has changed, but yeah, I as far as getting along and everybody doing everything, and yes, you're right. I'm sure we were perceived on the outside of being bears. And luckily I had 2 great assistant coaches when you guys were seniors. I had Dwight Bell and I had Josh Ray. Josh Ray had come on that year. That was his first year helping. I think Dwight helped just a little bit the year before. But Dwight was an excellent asset for us because Dwight didn't teach in the school. He was a black guy here in town.
Yeah.
And so he had a little bit of rapport with you guys that I didn't. I could get on to you and I could do some things, but then Dwight could go in the locker room with you and he could really get after you. And he could talk to you guys in a way that I couldn't say sometimes. So it was great to have that because, it is what it is. There's certain, how it is, it's perceived a certain way. And Dwight had that fatherhood figure with some of you guys, and his daughter was y'all's age. So, you guys really took to him. That was a blessing for me. It really helped.
Yeah, it was nice because, a lot of us did,
That's right.
have some sort of relationship with Dwight prior to him coaching. With Chastity was a couple of years younger than us, so,
Right.
We've been around and knew him. So, yeah, that was, and then Ray, Coach Ray coming in as a young guy too. Is very, I don't think I realized you were that young when you started.
Yeah. I'd only been, I'd been coaching when I got the job. I was 22. I guess I turned 23 that summer, and we went to camp. I was 23-year-old, just turned 23 in May. We went to camp first day of June, and at Lafayette. I remember going to Macon County High School, and I was coaching a high school team that I'd never coached and never had coached. Period. Most programs, high school programs and school program, period, you coach junior high or something first, then you go to the high school. Well, I didn't get that initiation. And it's not a bad thing. And I think I did all right with it. I didn't ever have anybody didn't do anything totally stupid. I'm sure I did enough stupid, but to get fired. But like I say, Mr. Woodmore didn't give me a lot of latitude there, and just luckily enough, I had a good run of guys that willing to work, and we had some success, But, and your team was just like the rest. We'd start off slow. I think, if I'm not mistaken, you helped me with this, football, that year in football, they went to the quarterfinals or maybe the semifinals of the state. It was either the last game or two before the state championship.
My senior year,
Yes.
I have to.
Seemed like they got beat at home in
Yeah.
the semifinals against Knox Fulton down on the creek bank there. And so we were late in November before we even got. Well, I remember this. Kevin Carter had his career game at Red Bowling Springs. We got beat 92-46.
Mm-hmm.
And so Kevin was one of our stars that night. And so we had 6 or 8 guys. We went to Red Bowling Springs and got blowed out and ended up beating them at the end of the year going on state tournament. So, I do remember that well. But yeah, that's the thing. And that was what's so hard. Hartsville was a football town.
Yeah.
When I played in high school, we were a football town then.
Yeah.
When 1990 and 91 and 92, we went to the sub-state. 91 through 95, the years I played, I think that stretch of years we won more games in those 4 years than they've won in any other time period in Trousdale County basketball. Now, I don't know exactly with Reggie Harper and that group. They went to the state as well in 74. I think they were 33. I think they were 31-4 or 31-3, something like that. But besides that, my senior year winning 26 games, that was some of the biggest, or 24 games, that was the biggest record there we'd had. So, luckily I had some success. And then when I come back and you guys got there, that was one of the best records, well, other than 74, it's the only team that ever been in the state tournament. So it was just a good time for me, good time for you guys, and, really had some good players.
Yeah. Let me ask you this. What's it like going into a season, coaching, as a basketball coach, getting ready for the season, and the season's going to start, and you're missing some of your core guys,
Sure.
and you don't know when you're going to get them.
It's tough. Well, you can remember, those first few weeks of practice even.
Yeah.
We're practicing with 8 guys. We're in there trying to do drills with 8 guys, so really not getting a lot done. We're trying to do individual work and this and that. You're trying to put your system in. Hopefully, and I think that's one of the main things I see that young coaches now struggle to do is I call it a system. You put your system in, whether you're going to run a 4-out offense or you're going to run 2-post offense, you're going to press, whatever it is you're going to do, your system, so that every year in junior high and high school, all they got to do is come in, plug in, and play. Mm-hmm. I thought we instilled our system so that once those 8 or 9 guys worked there in the spring or in the fall when they was waiting for football to get out, once the fall football players got there, it took them a couple of months to get their touch back. Took a couple of months to get in shape. But yeah, it was a struggle to think you were going to play 2 or 3, 4 games before you even had any of your players, your starters. I think your years, you and Quinn was starters on those teams, but the other 3 would probably be in football coming back. And then like Jesse and Corey and some of those guys were there. But man, it was a challenge. You just had, and you had to be. There's lots of times I knew we was gonna get our heads beat in, but I still had to give you the rah and try my best to get you to think you were gonna win. And so that's part of coaching too. So it's a struggle, but and I'm real good friends with Michael Owens, which is the coach at Red Bowling Springs, was then. He's the coach of Macon County now. And that night when he beat us so bad, I didn't say anything to him. It didn't matter. Because it was a preseason game, it was an early game, it wasn't a district game, so it really didn't matter. But I did think, man, I thought you was my buddy. So that's just how it goes. But that's young coaching. I've coached with coaches that absolutely throttled people, would beat them by 30, 40, 50 points. But then I've actually, hopefully I've been one of those that too. When we get up 15, 20, I've said, hey, let's get some of these other guys in. They work just as hard, so let's play them. So yeah.
So, what are some of the highlights, and we'll stick with, when I was playing those first 3 years of your coaching career. What are some of the things you look back on and remember?
Well, the run we had from your senior year, going into district tournament, we were. I think we had flipped a coin at the district tournament regular season meeting. All the coaches meet at Watertown, and we have a coin toss because we're tied for 3rd. I think going into the tournament, Friendship Christian was #1. Maybe Van Buren and us were tied for 2nd actually, and then I can't remember exactly how it broke out, but we won the coin toss, so we got opposite of Friendship. Because you know that year Friendship beat us both times regular season. We couldn't beat them. I'm pretty sure, did we not? Maybe we split with them.
Yeah, I think we did split with them.
But we struggled with Adams for Tomlinson.
Yeah.
For Friendship, and so we flipped and we got opposite, and Van Buren knocked them off.
Mm-hmm.
Van Buren beat them. So man, you talking about giving us just a little bit of lift that first, because I don't remember who we played first round, but Van Buren ended up knocking them off. We get the next night, catch Van Buren. Well, man, we rolled. And before the game, now you tell me if I'm wrong or right. I've told this story. You may remember it, you may not. I remember going in the locker room. I was getting ready to come in the locker room before we played Van Buren. And I stopped and I went back out because Jonathan was talking to you guys, Jonathan Ford. And I tell people all the time, I heard Jonathan telling somebody, now whether or not he was telling the team or telling himself, I heard him say these words. He said, let's just do what he says and get this mess over with. Let's see if we can win. Let's do what he says. Let's see what, I think he said, coach. Let's just do what coach says and let's see if it'll happen. And so I went in, I gave my speech, and we come out and we played on fire. Y'all played like a whole different team. You know, the next night you come out and win the district championship. You get all district. You know, you make all district. The first game you played like a dog.
I
You didn't play at all. I think I benched you that game, and Mama was on me and everybody else. And when we had that talk, and she was mad at me, and I remember this clear as day. I was embarrassing her, or I was embarrassing you, and I said, "No, ma'am, you embarrassed me." Talking about you that night, and you heard that. You were sitting there too. Man, the next night you was like you was on a warpath, and so the next two games you did the same thing. So that's some of those, I guess, mind games you play with kids, and it shouldn't do it that way, or shouldn't have to, but it's like it flipped a switch. And so then on, you turned it on, Jonathan turned it on, Quinn turned it on, T.T. Harper played. T.T. only played 1 year. He played his senior year with you guys. And he played out of his mind during that tournament. Wesley Satterfield didn't even start, come off the bench, and was playing great. Corey Pryor, Jesse Sutherland, you name all those guys, and they all had some big part in that game. So I remember that about Jonathan talking to you guys before the game. And then the district tournament, of course, we blowed through there and wore them out. Got into the region. I think the first region game, we got behind maybe 13, 14 points.
Yeah, it was. They jumped out quick. I can't. Was it Clark Range maybe?
I believe so. We were just kind of floundering around. Well, then here little Wesley Satterfield, skinny Wesley, come off a bench, and he starts pumping them in. I think Wesley has 14 points in the second quarter out there, I believe, and that ties us back up, and we go on that night to make a run too. So, everybody had a role, whether it was you in the district tournament getting things fired up, or it was Wesley in that first game of the region getting fired up. We got on that roll and won those championships and got us some momentum. But we won 7 in a row right there. Come back to the sub-state game at home, got to play in our gym, which is probably the hardest gym in the state at that time period to play in. The referees come in that night and we're stepping off the court because our old high school gym is only 87 or 84 feet long. A basketball court's 94. They almost didn't let us play the game because of the size of the court. But we were already there, the fans were there, they let us go. So it was that was a big night. It was a show. Jonathan come out and had 30, I think, in the first half, 28, something like that. It got us a big lead because second half the other team woke up off a bus and they come out trying to get going, but we just had enough to hold on. But those kind of things, man, I remember those clear as day. I can still see that and telling Mr. Martin we won. How about them apples? It was a big stay, and we both cut up and would aggravate each other and cheese, and everybody. But it was fun to see that old gym completely packed all the way to the rafters.
Yeah, because I remember you the day before or the day of the game, like you were counting like those little purple bleachers. You were counting the where the cracks were.
That's right.
Because I think, if I'm not mistaken, to host a sub-state game, the gym had to have
1,501.
Yeah, and so you were counting everything you could to. That's a seat. That's a seat.
We had to send in a letter to the state and say that yes, we could host it because that was a big thing. It's like, where are you gonna host your tournament? We're gonna host it home. And we was like, well, you don't host it. And I said, we have upstairs. We have 2 balconies we don't ever use. So, granted, did it hold that many? I say it does. you know, because we definitely packed them in there.
Yeah.
They were standing around the walls. You know, I can remember getting to the game that night and come out of the locker room after we got our talk, you know, and you guys were warming up, and probably behind us on our bench was probably 15 or 20 coaches from around the region that had came to our game to support us. So it was really cool to see that. But yeah, it was neat. It was a very neat environment. And I tell people all the time, I'd give anything. And we thought we had a little deal last year maybe to get a throwback game, to be able to go back to the old school, where the middle school is now, and play a high school game with, say, Smith County, Macon County, one of our old rivals that we play around here a lot, and have that game there. But I think some of maybe the old wood in the upper stairs, the upper part of the balcony maybe is bad, and they was afraid if they had to have that, it wasn't good enough to hold. But anyway, they chose not to do it. But I think it's just neat. It's a lot of history in that old gym.
Yeah, definitely, and that would be fun to have.
Oh yeah,
a throwback game, as you call it.
That's right. Even if we can't find any of those old jerseys, but it'd be fun to find some old '90 jerseys like these guys on pros now want to wear, and these guys in college, they want them all the way up their leg. You know, we wore the shorts when you played.
Yeah.
It was down below your knees.
Yeah,
we
can get them.
Oh yeah, you want pants or what they call knickers there, but yeah, the guys now with these little short shorts, they ought to go back and find those old 80, 89 and 90 uniforms and put those on. It'd be cool to see.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. I remember that sub-state game. I remember how packed it was in there. That whole tournament run, you know, it was you know, it was all very bittersweet, because the weekend before, maybe even the day before, you know, district tournament started, you know, we had lost Jared,
Right.
who had been a leading scorer for us the year before and a big part of the team, and I just remember the emotions of all of that.
Yeah, I do too. That was and I think that helped. You know, I really think that was a big plus, because you know him and Quinn was real close. And yeah, Jared was one of those kids. When I first got the job, I came back to Hartsville, and I went, and me and his dad were good friends, and he quit playing. Jared wasn't playing basketball.
Yeah.
And so I went to his house, and I said, hey, I'm gonna be coaching this year. I'd like for you to play. And you know, he's kind of, well, you know, this and that, and I talked to him a little more, and sure enough, Jared come back. And so, you know, that's one of those kids that you hated it. You know, and that family was great to me and good people, always around them. But I definitely think we definitely played with another level of emotion, and probably played through him some there, and was a big plus for us for sure.
Yeah, yeah, he was definitely and Jared wasn't a vocal person, you know, but I can remember in particular the year before, it might have been Mount Juliet Christian. We had a game, and I remember he had committed a foul or a turnover or something like very late in the game, and I remember him being in tears in the huddle, and then we, you know, came out of the huddle, and he gets the ball and puts it in the basket as time is expiring. Like, you gotta do what you gotta do. And one of the things he said was, because everybody talks about him hitting the game-winning shot, and one of my favorite things ever, he's like, I didn't hit the game-winning shot. I just hit the last shot. You know, if you miss a shot in the second quarter, or this person doesn't hit this shot in the first quarter, it doesn't matter that I hit that.
Yeah.
So,
And that was what was cool, man. You had a lot of guys like that. You know, Jared was a definite, like you said, he didn't lead by vocal, he led by example. And so, you know, and that all those guys that stepped forward and did that in front of you, that helped you guys. And the same goes for the guys after you. You know, you guys laid a foundation for basketball here that'll be hard to ever repeat. You know, so but without you guys doing that kind of stuff, I don't think basketball hardly does anything. But you know, you take the next. After I retired or left basketball in 07. Me and Coach Ray went to camp that summer. I'd already had, man, I was really burnt out on teaching. I was going to either build houses or I was going to work doing some other things, and I just had something else I was going to do. I was done with teaching, and me and Coach Ray talked about it that spring. And I told him he was having kids, actually having twins, and I said, man, I hate to ask you this, but you know, man, do you want this job? And he said, yes, I do. I said, now, you know, you got a lot on your plate. Are you going to be able to handle that? And he said, yeah. So we made a deal that I would finish out the summer and we'd come back to school and he would take over. And so, because, not gonna lie, I didn't know if they would give him the job if I had resigned in the spring and then go through a hiring process and hire for the fall. Nothing negative to Josh. It was just the fact that I knew how Hartsville was, and I knew how basketball was here, and I wasn't 100% complete that he would get that job. So I kind of set it up to where you didn't have a choice. We done started school back. Josh was assistant. He's gonna now step up to the head coach, and I'm just gonna step out and still teach and go on about the year. So anyway, that year, they had a great class come that next year. Golly, Caleb Holland, talking about Jared, Caleb Holland come on with you guys as an 8th grader, 7th grader, son, in the gym all the time. And then he grew up, and man, by the time he was a senior, he was a man too. So, everybody talks about the talent that we had in 04, 03, golly, did you see the team they had last year in Hartsville? They had a starting lineup that was over 6'6". Or, they had 3 guys 6'6", and they had 2 other kids off the bench, right off the start that was 6 foot that played football in Anaconda. So, you talk about some talent that's come through here in the last few years. But Cameron Rankin, was one of those guys that I've seen come from Hartsville. That's been from the time he was a little bitty to the time he was a senior, man, he was a ball player. And so, you guys kind of set that foundation. I feel like I kind of helped do that too, but you guys definitely did, because there's just a change. There's just been so much change from 2000 to now. Cell phones by far the biggest thing I've seen that changed things, because now everybody's got a phone. They're either playing with a phone or doing something constantly. Where you didn't have that. You was outside playing ball. I was outside playing ball. I didn't have anything. I had a Nintendo, but my daddy wouldn't let me play that all the time. We was either working the bike or doing something. He wasn't sitting at the house. So, it was just a thing. But now there's a challenge, and that's definitely taken away, I believe, from the sports. I think all the sports.
Yeah, I think so too. I think so too. I think especially with basketball, because I always talk about looking back on our run that yes, we had a good coach and a good system, but I think part of what made it so special and what made it work is by that time, senior year, you look at me, Quinn, Penny, Wesley, throw Jesse, that core 8 or 9 that you run, we had all been playing together since 2nd, 3rd grade.
That's right.
And
your skill had gotten so good. You guys had gotten so good at your craft. Everybody talks about your craft. And so, you had gotten to be a tremendous defensive player. You may not even thought you were, but you were the best defensive player we had, because you didn't mind sacrificing taking a charge. People, you can't buy a charge now in high school girls basketball right now. I've helped coach high school here for the last 2 years, and I can't beg them to take charges. And that was something we did in practice. You probably remember doing charge drills.
Yeah.
Because if you're not on playing defense, then how in the world do you expect to ever get the ball back to go and play offense? So you were one of those guys that bought into that, and Jesse and Court, but your skills got so good, whether it was on the defensive end or the offensive end. Everybody worked hard on their individual part, and then we plugged them in. Jonathan was a good scorer, period, and a good athlete. Yeah. But you had a shooter on the other side that when they doubled him, would pop out and shoot a shot. You were a good post, so when they were putting pressure out there on him, we get you one-on-one, bam, you're going to make a layup. And so everybody had their own skill set so that you couldn't stop it.
Yeah, I think what was important was you talk about everybody having their own skill set. Everybody had their own skill set, but their skill set didn't always match up with the role that they played.
Right.
And I think that's sort of what added an extra element.
Right.
Like, I looked at it, I look at the team and I say, I'm not necessarily the fastest, I'm not the best shooter, and a decent mid-range jump shot, but
right.
You got Penny to score, you got Jesse to score, you got these are your scores. You don't need me to score.
That's right.
I'll do these hustle things and that, but if you leave me open,
that's right. You take care of it.
Yeah, I'm gonna take care of it,
And that was what's so good. Like I say, everybody played their role.
Yeah.
And I don't remember people ever fussing about it. I don't remember you guys ever. Because I didn't mind telling you, I want you to rebound. You're probably not gonna shoot much with a rebound. And I didn't mind telling the kid, stop shooting and rebound, or do, you know what I'm saying? You had to be a screener. You know, golly, it was so many, because our offense, you know, most of the time we run a two-post offense, and either you was looking for the ball or you was screening for the other guy to get him the ball. And so that's just selfless. When you're willing to go and screen for your teammate to get them open for either a shot or then you come back to it, everybody play. And I don't, like I said, I just don't remember having anybody complain about, I'm not getting enough shots, I'm not getting enough this or that. I don't ever remember having that. And so there was probably guys that felt like it should have been more, but as far as it coming out to me and seeing it in practice and rearing its head, man, that was fun. Because when it, you know, especially in boys, you don't see it in girls. Man, I've helped girls for years now. Every now and then you'll see a girl fuss about it, but now boys especially, oh man, they're constantly fussing about it now. I hear coaches right and left telling it, well, he wants more shots or he's this and that. I'm thinking, no, I don't think I'd listen to that. I think we'd run a little bit for that kind of stuff.
Yeah, run a lot.
A few 6'4" or whatever it is.
Yeah, I was telling my son about those the other day actually.
Yeah.
But yeah, I don't remember anybody really complaining either. I think everybody, you know, like you said, bought into, you know, what they needed to do or what their job was, and I think we all kind of fell back on, this is what I need to do, but this is also what I can do if and when, you know, called on, you know.
Yeah, and that like I say, yes, and it's fun, you know, because I did have teams later on that didn't have that. You know, they were good kids and great hard workers, but they either weren't skilled enough to complete the task, or they didn't have the ability or want to put it all on the line. You know what I'm saying? So you had, you know, the year that you guys went to the state, you know, and got there and then, you know, run into Memphis Mitchell, you know, we go up 19 at half, we come in and everybody's cheering and hollering, and I come in, I'm like, guys, this ain't over. You know, they didn't wake up. We woke a giant up now, so we gotta play it. So, you know, that deal, and we go on about our way. But then the guys that were on that team and come back the next year, you know, Matt Paxton, do you remember Matt playing at all your senior year?
Here and there, no.
Matt, you know, after you guys are up 25, you know, but he comes in the next year and he plays your role. He's the center that comes in and takes the charges. He rebounds. He puts in the trash buckets. He takes all that stuff that you was doing and actually does it very well. I mean, heck, the last game of the year, we're in a sub-state game, and Matt's, I think he scores 20 points. And he didn't score 20 points all season long. But it's just they were taking everything else away, and like you said, when it come his time, he was ready for it. So, you know, those guys did that. But then even I think of the 05 and 06 team, they didn't have a senior in 05. Nelson Harper, Sammy Dunn, Maurice Harris, Dustin Delahaye, Cal Welch, Marco Wright come in the next year. You know, I remember those guys coming in, but they went from winning the little conference we used to play in junior high, being the best team in the region, to winning 6 games that next year. And I feel bad. Sometimes I really think that I broke them. I think I did that to them. We went to camp after that next year. We went to camp in Memphis. We went to Henderson County, which is Freed-Hardman is where we went to. And every school there was out of Memphis or West Tennessee, which was the top schools around. And I mean, got the fire beat out of us. We were getting beat by 50 and 60 points. And I really feel like that summer we almost broke our spirit to the point that they didn't think they could win. And they played a season, and I'm not exaggerating. I think out of those 20 losses we had that year, 15 of them was 5 points or less. We were right there and just could not get over the hump. If that bunch had won those 15 and been 22 or 23 and 5 or whatever going in, then tell where they'd have been. But it's just how it goes. You just don't ever know. And then, you know, the last year I coached, I think, was Michael Ford and Brendan Thurman, those guys. Ryan Williams moved here from Gallatin, come in that year. But those kids, you know, come in and stayed the whole time and worked hard. And Caleb Holland was on that bunch. One of the funny stories there, I know this is not your group, but we were at Gordonsville, Nelson Harper's senior year. Nelson Harper scored 1,000 points on the last shot he took. He hit a 2-pointer. We had 998 points and hit a 2-pointer to make him a 1,000-point scorer. But we were in the district tournament in Gordonsville. We were playing Westmoreland. And Westmoreland always played man-to-man, inbounds everywhere. And we run box 2, which is what we run every year I ever coached. And I told course, the main scorer is going to be the rollback. And I told him it's going to be guarded. It was Brennan Thurman. I said, you're going to be guarded. You're not going to be there. Michael Ford was the decoy coming off first. I said, you know they're not going to let you have it. And I told little Caleb, I think Caleb was a freshman or maybe a sophomore. I said, Caleb, you're going to be wide open. You're going to have a layup. He's like, his eyes got big. And her size of quarters. And I told him, boy, I said, now tell him to calm down before he gets out there. I said, but he's going to be wide open. Don't even look at nobody else. Sure enough, run a play, clapped it up, went out there. Michael come off first. They doubled him. Brennan rolled off the backside. They doubled him. Caleb standing wide open, laid it up, won the game. And so, it's just one of those things that you can see it coming before it ever come. But, those plays like that, Caleb turns into a stud of a player senior year. And it's probably some of that little stuff like that helped him have that success. So you look back on some of those times, and I remember those clear as day, but it was a real enjoyable time for me. I enjoyed it. But it got to where basketball was hard for me because I was so demanding, and I couldn't get out of them what I wanted. And so I put so much pressure on myself. And so, with you guys, I was very demanding as well, but we was able to get it out. Where the latter years, I was still the same demanding coach and probably even worse. But some of those guys just couldn't get it, or we just didn't have the athletes or the talent to do the same thing that I wanted done. So I put a lot of pressure on myself. So that's when I decided I better step away and go on to something else.
Yeah. And speaking of something else, you're doing these, you've been doing this, you just did your third one, correct?
Yeah.
The Downtown Sound?
Yeah.
Tell me how that came about and what it's all about.
Well, when I got elected back here in 2020, I was able to come back home. I'd been teaching 12 years in Westmoreland. And I taught ag and I helped basketball there, but I was just an assistant, so nothing near as stressful. And so when I got back home and got elected, I chose to be part of the Rotary Club. I wanted to be in the Rotary because I wanted to give back. And so, that was some of the things that I'd seen going around town. There was nothing really to do. You know how it is. Everybody always is fussed about Hartsville. Nothing to do. Me and my wife love going to listen to live music. We may drive to Nashville, may drive to wherever it's at. And so last year we were sitting at my daughters opened a snow cone business.
Yep.
My daughters have a snow cone business called Hartsville Snow. And we were at an event with them. We tow them around, and then me and my wife usually sit in a chair out there and watch them and do whatever. But we were at an event, and I told her, I said, man, would it be nice to have this in Hartsville? And she's like, yeah, it would. So I was like, why don't we just do one? Why don't we just have one at the park or have one somewhere and do it? So I come back and I talked to some different people, and the Chamber of Commerce had a vendor booth that I'd seen at some different things they set up. And I looked at it and I was like, well, I can make that into a stage. I got an old trailer, I can turn it into a stage. And so I got to think about it, the more I did. So then I decided, I said, hey, let's do it. And I said, I'll figure out how to pay for it. Let's start it. So sure enough, I come up with the idea. I kind of talked to Gallatin and see how they did theirs. And then I went to the Rotary. I pitched my idea to the Rotary and they was all for it. And we got on board with it. And sure enough, I called it a board. Really didn't have a board. I had Chad Oldham here in town, which has always been a host of different things. He used to DJ some weddings and parties and things. I asked him about it. Rebecca Trout, that helps with the animal shelter here in town, she was very successful getting some of her stuff promoted and things. So I asked her and talked to different people about how, what they thought. And everybody was very supportive, so we went with it. So sure enough, man, that's how it all come about. And the first month, I didn't have a clue what we was doing. I knew I had booked the music, and the music was the easy part. Getting guys to come play was no problem. Mm-hmm. Sound guys, now that was a little different story, trying to figure out how they was going to do the sound and the music and all that kind of stuff. But food trucks worked out well. First few people I reached out to said, yeah, we'd love to come. So that worked out good. We've got about 6 vendors every month. And we set up, and the first month, we had some hiccups. We didn't have a few things here. We needed more trash cans there, But we had about 300 people at the first event, I guess. And then the second month was a local band out of Lafayette. And we probably had about 500 at that show. And the weather was absolutely perfect. The first week we started, it rained.
Yeah.
We had to cancel. Mm-hmm. And so we was like, oh my. And I didn't even have a contingency plan what we was going to do. So I did call the band, and I called the sound guy. I said, hey, can you do next week if possible? And they said, well, yeah. So we actually moved it back a week and hit it perfect. And that worked out really good. And then last month, we had it again this past month and had about, 400 people, but it was absolutely smoking hot. It was 88 degrees in my truck at 8:30. So it was really, really hot. But yeah, about 400 people showed up, and so that's just a good, clean, fun event for the county. People can bring their bag chairs. There's food there, anything from barbecue to hot dogs to. Last month, the Cattlemen's Associations even had a ribeye sandwich, and so it's been really good. But that was the whole reason that came about. My daughter's had a business. I wanted something easy for me to do here in town instead of go out of town, and so I sacrificed and put some money up to help build a stage and get everything together. And so it's a little headache. I'm not gonna lie. I hope that there's some groups out there that want to help next year and kind of keep it going, but. And I'll keep it going, but it's like anything else. You can only do it for so long when you do it by yourself. So the Rotary's been really good. They've helped me too. So I've been that's been a blessing too, to come back and give back to the things that, I remember seeing the Rotary when I was a kid, being around, but didn't know anything what they did. Now seeing some of the money that we give back to the community, from the backpack programs to the children's, Christmas and that kind of stuff, man, that's all there is to it.
Yeah, and hopefully it does grow. I mean, like you said, maybe now people have seen it and maybe want to get more involved. But I think it's great that, like you said, we've always talked about, there's nothing to do here. Wish we had this. Wish we had that. Just, at some point you gotta look around and be like, you know what, I can do that.
Right, and that's all I did. I mean, I hope that other people will spear on and take another weekend. I'd love to see us, and it don't have to be a full-out show. There's a girl in Lebanon that came by my office, and they have, at somewhere in Lebanon over there, they set up and they just have people on a certain night of the week bring guitars and they sit around and play music. Mm-hmm. And it's like an open mic. If you want to sit there and play a song, everybody listen and play along. And so, I'm hoping that it'll spur more things like that. And I have lofty goals, I guess you would say. The year you guys went to the state tournament, Chad Oldham, I spoke of a minute ago, used to have a barn we all used to hang out in. And on the wall of his barn, he had this paper on the wall. I can't remember exactly what it said, but it had everybody's name. Anybody that ever showed up there had signed it. Well, on that paper though, I had written Mike Potts or something, and over the big bubble letters, I put state bound before the season. State bound, because I had in my mind that we could make it. I knew we could make it. And so fast forward 20 years now, we recognized you guys this past year for your 20th anniversary. I still have lofty goals for Hartsville. I still see, yes, I'd love to see the music. Like I said the other day, these new guys that are coming in and singing, Willie Scruggs and those guys. Wouldn't it be awesome in 5-10 years from now, say, man, they played in Hartsville a few years ago, look at them now. Yeah. And so, my goal is, yes, to grow that, make it big, but two, I'd love to see a pavilion or an amphitheater or something there around town just dedicated to that kind of thing. Music's a big deal here. Yeah. You were part of the music programs here. Mr. Jones has been here for years and put a lot of time back in this community. But Mr. Griffin, he passed away this past, last few weeks ago. Yeah. He was a big time music guy in this community. So, and there's so many artists and stuff that live here that people don't even know about. There's so many. We got tons of country music and other kind of artists that live in this area. So, I'd love to see some kind of pavilion or something dedicated to those arts and something you can use whether the weather's good or not. Yeah. Cover pavilion or whatever it might be. So us, myself and the Rotary, we've talked about that and maybe partnering with some of these other clubs and groups and maybe getting some of this kind of thing going and generate some money to be able to do something like that. So we'll see.
We'll see. Well, thank you for taking the time to sit with me and reminisce.
Yeah, man. I enjoy this, and I could talk all day. That's the thing about it. I fill up space, so I really enjoy it, and I appreciate you asking. Somebody had asked me a while back and said you talked to them and said you want to do it, and I was like, man, that'd be great. That'd be great. Now you just got to educate me on how to get on and listen. So I told 2 or 3 about it this morning. I was going to be on there, so they said, well, you just have to let me know, because that's the thing, man. I'm 46. You take our generation. We're trying to learn. We're trying to get there, but we still, some of us 40 and above, don't understand how all the podcasts and all that kind of things work in the world now. I've got other friends of mine that know exactly, but I guess I'm just old school. You have to educate them.
It's easy. We'll get you on there. We'll make sure you know how to listen and get you heard. Any last thoughts before? we wrap up?
Not really, man. I appreciate you doing this. I think it's great for our county. Hartsville football for sure has a heritage that's like none other. I had uncles. I had an uncle that played at UT. Got hurt his freshman year. Would have been right there with Reggie, no doubt, probably going into the pros. I had another uncle play practice with him that every OVC school in the country wanted. So football here has always been such a big deal. And basketball too. Might not have had the accolades as far as state championships and things of that nature, but the Reggie Harpers and the Branhams and all those guys that's played back before me, Troy Calhoun's, the 1,000-point club. It's not something that is a big to do, but they have finally in the gym started from 2020 or 2000 on. They have the 1,000-point scorers club on the wall, and I started that when I come back because John Harper I knew was real close to getting it, so I was like, he needs to be recognized. But myself and Dale Rankin played in '95, both have 1,000. Dale may be the leading scorer, all-time leading scorer here. Don't have any recognition of it. Troy Calhoun, 91, had 1,000 points. Those guys I know in that time frame, there's nothing recognizing them. So hopefully what you're doing today will kind of spin off to maybe some type of Hall of Fame in the future. Because you take Macon County, Smith County, Westmoreland, all these schools around, they recognize their greatness from the years past. Now, one of the problems we have, don't have the stats, don't have some of the numbers, but there's enough people to vouch for Reggie Harper.
Yeah.
No doubt that man needs to be in some kind of Hall of Fame in Johnson County. T.T. Harper, he's one of the best by far running backs I've seen since I've been here. Tacola C was a stud in his time. So you just take those guys, and even the earlier ages, I just hear some stories of people from around town, talk about this guy did that. So hopefully what you're doing will kind of spur some of that on to be some of the history that'll be marked down as well.
Yeah, that'd be nice. You just talk about the stats and numbers and stuff. That's one thing I wish that I knew who to talk to or to see. Like you said, who is the leading scorer or leading rusher? I think that would be interesting to start figuring out and put it somewhere, even if it's just on a website.
Now Jerry Richmond for the radio, Cheese. Jerry had from probably 90 basketball wise, from about 2000 forward, he's got most all of them.
Okay.
Football, I would say earlier than that, he has some good records. Yes, sir, that definitely needs to be documented and put out somewhere, like you said, on a website or spreadsheet somewhere, so it can be continued on. So at least the people going forward will have something to be recognized for. Because, man, like I say, you guys, I had to really search and dig to find who was all tournament at the district tournament, who was all district. I remembered, I thought I did, but my old brain ain't gonna last long.
Yeah.
And when I'm gone, other than that picture that we hung in the wall up there, the team that I played on in 91, 92, that picture got took down and was being thrown away. I found it in a trash pile in the storage room. So if we don't preserve some of this history and some of these things like that, your kids and my kids may never know.
Yeah.
So but like I say, what you're doing will definitely help present that to the future, and I hope it'll keep something going.
I hope so. Once again, thank you for being here. Thank you guys for listening. If you haven't already, hit the like button, subscribe, share, all that good stuff, and stay tuned. And I'll be back in 2 weeks with another episode. Until then, have a good day and a good night.